All right, this is part two of structures, and the topic, if you didn't watch the first video, the topic is structures, and this is Paul's treasure hunt, formerly known as Wonderlust, and today we're talking about the thrill of the chase and what Forrest Fenn said about structures. And he said there's no need to dig up old outhouses. The treasure is not associated with any structure. He said it means the treasure is not hidden in or about a structure. So, we're going to, and here was the the screen PowerPoint display of what I was talking about before with structures. So I'm going to jump, see if I can get back to where I was before. So basically, I had been discussing, what is a structure? What kind of structures are there? Is it a building? You know, is it a bridge? What is it that Forrest Fenn is talking about? So let's get back to where we were. See if I can find the proper slide to get back to so we can make this fast. And it's funny how technology gets in the way sometimes. So here I was. So what I was saying was is that I don't think for when he's talking about structure, is he talking about geological aspects? But he is. Maybe he is. So when you start digging into the minutia of what he was saying, you start looking at it. He says in or about. So you start looking at the sentence, the word about, right? And about means reasonably close to, almost, on all sides, around, in many directions, in the vicinity, and around the outside. Okay, and of course, put a groovy little picture here of what a structure looks like. A building structure. So, what does all this mean? If the treasure is not associated, and associated means there is no connection between the things or concepts. Okay, so the word associate can mean a relationship between people, friends, or people you know. It's all, an associate. Associate is synonyms: colleague, coworker, equal, peer, workmate, accomplice, affinity, ally, collaborator, confederate, half, or partner. Um, so Forrest Fenn is saying the treasure is not associated, right? It's not. He's saying it means there is no connection between the things or concepts. So when he says the treasure is not associated with any structure, he's saying that there's no connection between the location of the is he talking about the location, or is he talking about the clues? That still drives me nuts. Is he talking about the actual location? And I guess that's what I'm getting lost in my own argument here. But I think it's another thing too is that Forrest Fenn said that he said that he likes to play with words, and he said he likes to look up words, right? He likes to look up he likes to look up words, and he also said that he likes to make up his own definitions, and words can mean different things. He can make up any meaning he wants, And I'm wondering, is this a play on words when he says that the actual treasure chest itself is not associated with any structure? And so, could he be referring to, is he playing with words here? He knows. He's looked up the word. He knows what he's saying. He's saying that the treasure is not associated with any relationship between people, friends, or people he knows. He's not saying, and a structure being an organization of colleagues, coworkers, accomplices, partners, wives. So what he's saying is he's not. So what I'm doing is I'm trying to point out maybe what Forrest Fenn is saying. He's not saying that, which is really really clever on his part. Is he's saying he's not is that you think he's talking about a building or a bridge. He's saying it's not associated with any structure, right? There's no relationship between the location of the poem and any structure. But what he's really saying is, it's not relation. There's no relationship between any person I've ever known, or any friend I've ever had, or my wife, or my family. You know, what I mean, related to any organization I've ever been involved with. Those are, I mean, that is very interesting. I mean, there's definitely a dichotomy between two things. I mean, he's saying that the poem doesn't have to do with any people I know, my family, or any relationships I've ever had in any organization I've ever been involved with. Okay, think about it, right? Is there a possibility that he literally just blew past you, right? And people go, "Oh, well, one thing that you didn't think of is that he's he's used the English language in a way that's completely misdirected you." And now people are like, you know what? There's no way it could be associated with that monument over there, or that building, or that other thing, because Forrest Fenn said it's not associated with any structure. Okay, so I get to the crux of my rant, right? There it is. So, not associated or near any structure, you know, no need to dig up old outhouses. The treasure has no connection between. And what I did was, I did a little thing here where I substituted other words. And so I said, and I'll read it. So there's no need to dig up old outhouses. The treasure has no connection between things or concepts with any structure. That's interesting, way to put it. Um, and so I kind of added this other thing in here, is that we read the question again. Mr. Fenn, when you said it's not associated with any structure, did you mean that all nine clues, or just where the treasure sits? Yes, D. I mean, it means the treasure is not hidden in or about a structure. Notice Notice he does not answer the nine clue question directly. He sticks to his talking point about structure, and he introduces a new word, about. Hidden in or about. Okay? Another one too that I noticed as I was started digging into this thing was that um, at the very beginning of the poem, the man says, this part makes my head want to explode, is that he says, listen, he says the very first poem word of the sentence, the very first line of the poem, okay, the very first line of the poem says, as I have gone alone in there. Okay, as I have gone alone in there. In there is a pronoun, right? He didn't say, as I have gone alone in a church. Okay, as I have gone alone in the Denver State Capitol. Okay, but the implication is, I have gone alone in there, which is a place. There is a place, which is can also be a thing. So one of the first things I noticed when I go into the woods, and the one thing I think is interesting is the picture on the left, is that, and I spent a bunch of time in the woods too, is, a lot of times you go into these larger stands of trees, and when you look up, and or you go down these trails, it definitely feels sometimes like you're going into a cathedral. It has that feeling of going going into this place, and having almost like this cathedral experience. I mean, the trees are extremely large, and you're like tiny little human, and it definitely can have that feeling. It imbues that feeling to an individual. I think. I mean, for most people, of you have that sort of feeling of this this powerful, overwhelming feeling. You walk into the forest, it can be so very cathedral like. Okay, I said cathedral too many times. Um, and I just wanted to point that out, that he says, as I've gone alone in there. Um, Another thing that I was talking about is the word about. And if you look up the word about, it's about is reasonably close to, almost, on all sides, around, in many directions, in the vicinity, and around the outside. So I did the same little game. Excuse me, I took the question. I said, Mr. Fenn, when you said not associated with any structure, did you mean the in all nine clues, or just where the chest sits? And Forrest said, it means the treasure is not hidden in or about a structure. Well, if I substitute those questions, if I substitute in there, he says, it means the treasure is not hidden in or reasonably close to a structure. It means the treasure is not hidden in or in many directions from a structure. It means the treasure is not hidden in or in the vicinity of a structure. I just thought that was interesting. So, in summary, you know, what is too far to walk? How far it? How far is it? Forgot to put some. This should have done a spell check, but how far is it? Near or not close? Does it mean we see no structures where the chest is? Like the picture I just showed you of the forest. Um, is I still have this strange affinity towards an idea that there's a structure, but where we need that structure because that's this thing we need to see. But the chest is, as he said, it's near, but not in close proximity to something else. So when we get there, we see no structures. So I mean, that would fulfill that other end of the argument, right? Is that he's saying you need to see a bridge. You cross that bridge, and then it's going to be not far, but too far to walk away from that. When you get there, I mean, all you see is trees. You're walking into this cathedral of trees, and you're not going to see any man-made structures. And the also, I'm getting to the point. I mean, the point that I made, or one of the points that I wanted to make, is that he mentions the structure, but I mean, you're going into something, and I think that there's a possibility, two or three possibilities, and one of them is that he's talking about a stand of trees, an old and I'll just say it, an old growth stand of trees that somehow are protected. And when you walk into that stand of trees, like I've described or I showed you in the picture, it's going to be like walking into a cathedral, right? Because remember, you're on your last breath. You're going to die. You're going to throw yourself down there. And where do you want to do it? You want to do it in the cathedral of nature, right? You want to do it in this grand place, right? It's where your dying bones will last, and you'll have the chest that'll hold the things that are most important to you in life. You want to do that in the church, right? And I know it's pretty bizarre, man, but it's not. Maybe. Um, so are we talking about all nine clues or just the final place, as structure? Does the poem talk about two frames of reference or more? Are we at one place and then need to go back and then look at another? And that's another idea that I have, is that I was just talking about, is that, that if the poem seems to have multiple frames of reference, and it's been well documented that he seems to be talking about sort of one place, and then he sort of seems to be talking about another. Another thing too is that it's sort of what I will do and what you will see or have to do. So there's sort of what I have done and what you must do. So there's two frames of reference. So I find that to be perhaps a telling clue to this entire thing, is again this frame of reference issue of that I think there's more than one place. You need to go to a place and perhaps either see or do something, and then that will tell you or confirm your bias. You have the poem has the directions, and once you see that place, you'll kind of be like, man, if I go to this other place, it fits that really well. And that's what I'm talking about. Is two frames of reference. There's two different places you have to be, and when you go to that other place, just like I'm showing here, let's wrap this up. Just like I'm showing here, is that I think the frame of reference is that, one frame of reference is that you have to go out, you have to go to this structure, and you have to go below it, and it's then you have to be wise enough to know to go away from it. And when you go away from it, you're going to turn around and you're going to see the blaze, and there's got to be some frame of reference that you're going to have to look down to see that. But I think you have to see this structure of the blaze, and then you'll know you're at the right place. I really think there's some kind of dynamic going on there with this. And I also think another thing too is the picture of the horse out here in the middle of nowhere is that I think that's, and I mean, I'm throwing a lot of stuff out there and I'm just trying to make a point, and I think the point is whether it be deep in a forest or out in the middle of the desert is I think that what he's trying to say is that there is it's somewhere extremely remote. And I think if you're nearby and there's like and I could be wrong about that, but I just think there's a remoteness to this, and but it also has to be a place that a 79-year-old man could have gotten out to without too much, with some effort, but not too much. So, anyways, that's it for structures. I may do a third one where I kind of follow up and kind of bang it around some more, but or follow up on the comments. So, like my videos and subscribe and leave comments. All right, take care.